Hello friends, welcome back to Spiritism for All, and today we will continue to study the book Behind the Scenes of Obsession and the chapter In the Amphitheater. The book is available for download in the link of this video, the link provided in the description of this video. The spiritual author is Manoel Philomeno de Miranda, and the medium is Divaldo Pereira Franco. Here we will see a journey of the spiritual disobsession team to the amphitheater, the place where the evil spirit Dr. Theophrastus coordinate a great number of obsessors, including Guilherme, who is the obsessor of Mariana, the daughter of the Soares family. So let's proceed. As the time approached for our visitation to the places where Dr. Theophrastus works, the lessons provided by the benefactor Glaucus on the history and realities of hypnosis came back to us. Guilherme, fraternally supported by Ambrosio, Saturnino's delicate nurse and assistant, was incorporated into the group, and so we approached the door of the União Espírita Baiana's building to be transferred to the amphitheater. Saturnino, helpful and severe, foreseeing the gravity of the excursion, trained us all as much as possible in the resources of concentration and prayer in order to avoid any disaster, in the unfortunate redoubt towards which we were heading. The task of great importance had as its essential objective to know the working methods of the adversaries of light, in order to elucidate the incarnate companions, us, and also apply the compatible antidotes when these clarifications came to light. Undoubtedly, since the first hours of Spiritism, efficient messengers have come to earth to offer clarifications about the landscapes of beyond, and even before the arrival of Spiritism, incessant reports reached the ears of men, warning them about the unquestionable realities of life. A singular vehicle awaited us at the door, similar to the old coaches, but of greater proportions, to which we were harnessed two teams of white steeds, fine equine specimens, led by a middle-aged coachman, who greeted us with discreet courtesy. We got into the coach, which left. The drawn curtains did not allow us to see the outside. Brother Saturnino explained that he knew the location of the amphitheater, close to the marshy region of the city, in a deserted area not too far, which we would reach in an hour's journey approximately. He further elucidated that the measure to use the vehicle was justified considering the situation of some of the members present on the tour, little trained in more expressive flights outside the somatic body, like Guilherme, and the others like us, still handcuffed to physical forms. Invited to silent prayer, we seek to dive into the sublime ocean of prayer in order to contribute with the possible resources for the success of the mission. After more or less the allowed time, we heard a commotion and an altercation in front of us, when then we jumped out of the car, continuing on foot. There was a multitude of vicious entities in repellent attitudes, who dialogued with vile and outrageous expressions. Among them, one could notice several incarnates, perfectly differentiable thanks to the perispirit bonds still linked to the physical body, who seemed handcuffed to some of the disembodied libertines, who led them as if they were slaves of their passions, and from whom they could not free themselves. Others appeared with simian faces, and the room reeked of putrefaction. Viscous and gloomy vibrations carried the skies, which had a dark brownish tone, without stars, and the miasmatic ground looked like an insane mesh that, however, did not attract their attention, accustomed as they were to the sad and dead landscape of the place. The building of viscous and dark matter was semicircular in shape and suddenly resembled old circuses, despite for the substance it was covered. Purple and red lights scattered tormented shadows over the crowd, and every now and then a company and thunderous mass, violently pushing those in front, arrived in infernal mirth. It could hardly be seen on earth a spectacle of such a nature, and yet we were on earth, a little outside the vibrations of the material world, but inside it, however. Some caricatural and buffoon guards took care over the wide entrance, where some devices were set, reminiscent of the tourniquets used among men, with the difference that above them there was a quadrangular box which Saturnino said had the purpose of preventing the entrance of spirits that did not belong to the gang. It was the psychovibrometer that had the ability to register the vibratory waves of all the assistants, thus denouncing any intrusions by the superior spirits. He, Ambrosio, and Glaucus, however, took special precautions in order to cross the passage without causing any alarm that could denounce them, through a process of mental immersion in past memories, which would reduce their vibratory register. In addition, they would penetrate the precinct soon, when the number of visitors would be very expressive, so that the device should be impregnated with fluids of low vibratory content. As for us, the incarnates, and Guilherme, there would be no problem. Moving away from the agitation, the benefactors and assistant concentrated for a long time, and we observed a singular phenomenon. Slowly, their mysterious aspect became denser, and their shape underwent a slight transformation that distorted them, and, as if they were breathing in the uncomfortable atmosphere, they began to present a slight stertorous breathing, and sensitively modified, they invited us to enter. We crossed the barriers without any incident, and were surprised by a wide space from bleachers that bordered a dimly lit arena, where the show would take place. The deafening din reminded us of a den of beasts. Deeply vulgar expressions showed us the quality of those who were there, exploding in abundance and embarrassing us. Saturnino very discreetly called us to prayer, so that we would not be distracted. He clarified that spiritual benefactors accompanied us from afar, through the invisible threads of thought, interceding for all of us to the Lord of Life. Here some clarifications. The amphitheater is under the ground of Earth in a meshy area. So they don't see sky, they see something brown, as if it were the sky. And the construction, the building, was possible because it's another vibratory kind of matter, which is the matter of the spiritual world. And you have many levels of vibratory matter depending on the spirits that live in that place. And the psychovibrometer is an equipment that checks the vibratory pattern of the citizens in order to start an alarm if it checks someone that has a vibratory level upper than the levels that they allow to be there. The idea is to discover high spirits, high level spirits, mixed to the normal citizens of this kind of city, and avoid intrusions. But you see there that you have engineers, specialists, and in this kind of city. And the obsessors, you find obsessors very intelligent, very well prepared in many areas to produce this kind of equipment. But let's proceed. Guilherme terrified, just a minute, in order to avoid the equipment, the high spirits like Glaucus and Ambrosio, they remembered some phases of their lives in which they were unhappy, that they had troubles, so they reduced their level of vibration, remembering the bad moments that they lived. This kind of procedure we can see in the books of André Luiz too. I don't know if all of them are translated to English, but you can see the same description of the same equipment and the process of vibratory reduction of the benefactors. Guilherme, terrified, was about to lose his balance. Helped, however, by Ambrosio, who supported him, he kept silent, expectant. There suddenly appeared in the inner and semicircular enclosure strange followers who blew the strange cornets and announced the arrival of Dr. Theophrastus. Guilherme beside us, among the agitated mass that screamed unrestrained, began to tremble uncontrollably. The moment, however, was one of tumult and shouting, as the crowd eagerly awaited their host. Here and there, however, there were many expressions of dread, not only among incarnates, but among discarnate ones, who awaited the beginning of the presentation, embarrassed and overcome by atrocious fear. With criminal faces, these entities embarrassed even those who were bearers of hardened feelings, except for those who were there completely mad. The atmosphere was unbreathable. Clouds of smoke rose abundant, mixed with acrid odors, like those derived from narcotic plants, and one could see a spiritual multitude of insatiable, heated passions, which habitually threw themselves in torment over their fellows caged in the flesh, in unspeakable processes of stormy vampiric processes. They eagerly awaited the unfortunate lessons about the techniques of obsession in order to continue their inferior programs of psychic magnetization in their former masters, who automatically passed on the painful condition of slaves. So people were there to learn obsession techniques in order to revenge from the ones that obsessed them in a previous life. If there is not the forgiveness, we will keep on hurting our enemies all over and over again. That's why Jesus said that we have to forgive many times. There was no time for further reflection, since at the moment appeared a grotesque group, strangely dressed, supporting a throne under a colorful canopy, in whose seat was a hideous personage entering the singular precinct, dressed in a garish color which varied from purplish to black. He sported a gross and slack cloak that fell from his shoulders and was supported by his left arm. His face, opened in a smile that looked more like a grimace, did not hide the bright ferocity in the two almost oblique eyes, which stood out in the fat and emaciated face, under a broad forehead with hair strands of matted hair. Abundant moustaches were lost in the extravagant whiskers, completing the terrifying and macabre sight. The bizarre procession swung the ring 3 times and quieted in the center, being the dreaded Dr. Theophrastus transferred to a intentionally armed podium with vulgar and ridiculous gestures. There was a sudden silence of anticipation and dread. Turning to the crowd, he began to speak through a microphone that carried his voice to the galleries, through several high-powered sound projectors. The harsh and merciless words reproached those who feared the fulfillment of the duty of revenge, exploding threats and displaying all the arrogance that he was supposed to possess. The silence was terrifying. No sound, no mockery, except from time to time a few screams of terror from the stands. "We have a court case today," he refrained. And to make himself more reckless, he apostrophized, "We will judge a criminal who arrived from earth to our prisons almost a year ago. Those who might be called jurors appeared, taking their seats in a reversed place, an accuser, 2 witnesses, one with a pitiful appearance, and the other was just a shapeless and weakened perispiritual form, kept in a nauseating basket, and that was placed on a table with a highlighted position at the center of the proscenium. So came the accused woman, the jurors, the accuser, 2 witnesses, spirits that were trying to born and was killed through abortion. One of them almost lost his perispiritual form. Handcuffed and tied to a chain, a young woman of about 35 years old was brought in, escorted by 2 guards, and led to the stage of the said reenactment. The disembodied appearance and expression of madness deformed her to a great extent. Ragged and filthy, she almost crawled undermined by the lack of strength. The simulacrum of judgment was certainly embarrassing. The unfortunate woman glanced her dull eyes several times, translating how much suffering invaded her being. The accuser, upright and hurtful, narrated, "This woman comes from earth after a lifetime of abomination. Cheating herself as much as she could, she self-indulged in all sorts of pleasures, closely assisted by several co-workers of our organization after her first crimes. Having the opportunity to become a mother, 6 consecutive times she committed crimes in all of them, evading through infanticide, abortion, any responsibility for her own actions. In the last time she became a victim of her own levity and discarnate after a terrible and prolonged hemorrhage that robbed him of any possibility of survival. So the last abortion killed her. Among those whom she prevented from returning to the flesh, here are 2 of her victims in different states. One managed to resume the previous form, but shows the signs of the blades that broke his body in formation. The other still sleeps hibernated in disfigured form thanks to the thorn he suffered in the act of abortion. So the mother, the woman that's being judged, soon awoke, however, in the tomb a few days after the outcome, after he passed away, he died, believing herself alive in her body, ignorant of spiritual realities, and a soldier of ours told her she was under arrest for the crimes committed, and handcuffing her, brought her to the prison in which she has been until this moment. Her first victim, who belonged to our community, filed a complaint a long time ago, which led us to assist her for a few years, and now we are gathering to do justice. The poor spirit watched everything, almost without realizing it. She was completely astonished. She seemed partially crazy, gathering, with a lot of mental effort, some sparse expressions which, however, she couldn't coordinate. Insults and offense rained down, hurled in abundance. The witness gave a shocking narration, interrupted several times by the horror of the galleries, after which a voice stood out in the noise, announcing the verdict. "Guilty!" High-pitched laughter erupted from all sides. Dr. Theophrastus rose, and after receiving bows from his associates, sentenced, "Let's do with her what in her heart has always been, a female wolf." He approached the suffering entity and, looking at her, mocking, began to offend her vilely. The victim showed no reaction. She was as if her vision was far away, fixing at the evocations of the criminal abortions she committed in the days of folly, which were left behind, but which still were not consumed. Forcing her to kneel, while he slapped her back with a long and hissing whip, he ordered, in a broken voice, "Unhappy viper, devourer of our own children, take your form, the one you already have in your tormented mind. Your justice is your conscience. Obey, you hungry serpent." The voice, impregnated with heavy, deleterious, and vigorous vibrations, doubled the centers of meager, per-spiritual resistance of the tormented woman, and before our eyes, at the command of the cruel hitman who used depressing hypnotic processes, acted on the full of remorse per spiritual subconsciousness of the infanticide, imprinting on her the tragedy of shape mutation in an handles and most lacerating phenomenon of lycanthropy. Again, we can see the same type of judgment and shape mutation in the book of André Luiz, one of the books of André Luiz. And the judge uses the same process, the hypnosis, to condemn the spirit to turn herself into a wolf woman. And the wolf is used as a beast to protect the judges and their constructions. You see these next pages. Convulsive cries and screams erupted simultaneously from the stands. The altercation was general. Suddenly, alarm bells were heard, and the disturbance was complete. Saturnino, in a low voice, tried to calm us down, adding explanations. The horrendous sight for all of us was produced in a few hundred reincarnated here present, constrained by the obsessive forces in which they are subjugated to their executioners, very deep and violent shocks, which unexpectedly caused their return to the body. Blessed citadel of defense that life grants us to learn and start over. We see that the incarnates were so afraid, so impressed that they came back to their bodies and woke up there as if someone wakes after the worst nightmare. These spirits will wake up ecstatic, even those who retain dementia in the registers of their consciousness, returning from strange and terrible nightmares, bathed in algaed sweats, frightened, weeping, desperate. And wishing to enlighten us with the wise lessons, he continued, while the disturbances continued. In this sense, it is that the knowledge of Spiritism performs the best therapy for the spirit, sanitizing his mind, encouraging him for the right work and correct attitudes, and above all, sweetening him by exercising love and charity as providential measures of readjustment and balance. There is no force operating in evil that can penetrate a mind that has been sterilized by the vitalizing energy of optimism, which is acquired through unrestricted trust in God and through the practice of actions of solidarity and fraternity. And giving more emphasis to teaching, he concluded, combining the effort that each one must make for their own benefit, prayer is the inexhaustible source that irrigates the being, renewing and improving the prayer, also giving rise, soon after self-purification, to plan beyond the setbacks and mishaps, dragged by the subtle modulations of the superior spheres of life, where he will draw vitality and strength to overcome all obstacles. So the author is telling us that we must pray, because through prayer we can connect ourselves to the higher spirits, the benefactors that can help us in any situation. Gradually, order was reestablished, although the evasion of the incarnate being very expressive, in the desperate search for refuge in their bodies. The strange scene continued for a few more moments, and the tormented spirit of the wolf-woman was, at the command of the chief, sent inside to be placed in defense of the amphitheater. There were also some other demonstrations of elementary and crude hypnosis, but of effect on the astonished crowd. Afterwards the show ended, after the departure of the infamous retinue and their leader. A little depressed, we also left and returning to inhale the breath of nature when we arrived at the square where the União Espírita Baiana was located. After the journey, we entered there to receive revitalizing energies and the final clarifications from the attentive benefactor. Recomposing the circle and lovingly received by those who remained, we were invited to prayer, after which Saturnino, in order to clarify us, explained slowly. Apparently, the unfortunate companions who toil in the amphitheater constitute a secure organization in the service of evil. Trained in the practice of ignominy, they are supposed to be prepared to attack the tormented spirits that gravitate to both sides of life, immanent to the passions that consume them, passions whose behavior easily turns in which them, in others like them, falling into the vigorous meshes that become instruments that the divine law uses to correct those who still prefer the sinuous path. A long time will pass before the laws of love, laws of life, therefore, will be definitively established among us. It is convenient to consider that only good has characteristics of perfection, as it is the work of God who is perfect. Evil, engendered by the troubled spirit, operates by methods of violence and in this way is flawed, which attests to its origin. Were it not for that, we could not have entered the precinct of malignant interventions, as the psychovibrometer would have denounced us. Similar to a Geiger measure that detects radioactivity, the psychovibrometer obeys the same principle, having however the magnetic characteristics that register the psychosphere of those around it, detecting the mildest vibrations that then trigger the needle that strikes a relay which, in turn, commands a circuit of alarms scattered in the adjacent rooms. With this description, we can see that we have engineers in the evil places like this, because it's a construction, this equipment is a construction of an electrical engineer, an electronic engineer, maybe some physics, all of them working for the evil spirits. As we try to tune with the environmental energies in which we found ourselves and sucked the same residues scattered in the air, we naturally immersed ourselves in dense waves of low vibratory content that enveloped us all, and we, Ambrosio and Glaucus, began to suffer the understandable malaises which Guilherme was used to, by constant attunement, and the other incarnates of the group, thanks to the condition of the organic body, did not experience greater shock since we remained momentarily in the same content of depressing energies, which prevented the oscillation of the recording needle of the device. So he's explaining why the device didn't start due to their journey. The Guilherme and the incarnate ones already had a low vibratory condition. Guilherme because he was an obsessor, and the incarnate ones because they were incarnate and mixed with low vibratory energies due to their condition of being alive. And so Ambrose and Glaucus had to decrease their vibratory pattern, and that caused them an understandable malaise. However, if it were the opposite, that is, if the apparatus detected vibrations of low vibratory tone, none of the entities that were there, wishing to violate superior precincts, could make subtle the pattern of the psychosphere to create a higher condition. No doubt, every accent is slow and rough. So he explains that we can decrease our vibratory pattern, but to increase it, we have to fight against our failures, fight against our problems, use the forgiveness, increase our pattern through the good, through making good actions, through all the orientations that Jesus left for us. So you can decrease your pattern, but increase only through a very slow and rough way, which is evolution. An example of that is that you may be feeling very well, but after something happens to you, a problem, an aggression from someone, traffic crash, traffic jam, you become angry, and at that moment you feel a kind of malaise. You feel that something happened to you. You were happy, you were better, and now you feel angry, you feel heavy. Same situation. Therefore, let us thank the Lord. We will have the opportunity to return to the amphitheater when opportune, to continue observations and tasks. When then, Brother Glaucus will play a specific role with our brother Theophrastus. The works were finished when the first rays of the day defeated the stubbornness of the night. Reconducted to the body, particularly, I had retained painful and distressing memories. The day was one filled of restlessness and emotional dystonia, as if the night had offered us cruel nightmares, from whose confused vision we could not free ourselves. Next chapter, New Events. Thank you very much for watching us. If you like this video, please leave us your like, subscribe to the channel so you can help us to grow, and share the videos with your friends and other students. Leave us your comment if you want, and thank you very much.